Hey guys, it's Mark Johnson again. How you doing? This is part two of About Me and getting to know me a little bit better. Part one, if you had a chance to look at that a few minutes ago, was about a 10-minute video that talked a little bit about my roots, the good life of Nebraska and the great life of being born and raised in Ravenna, Nebraska. A little bit about my college choices and the college that I chose and the degrees that I chose and that experience. So I hope you found that interesting. It was a little long at 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to make this one a little bit shorter. This second video about me is more focused on my professional career. So I've now been doing, for a little over 30 years, B2B, technology, high-tech sales, primarily software and related services, and it's been a great career, no regrets. Looking back, it's just been a wonderful experience. So I want to tell you a little bit about some of the choices that I've made and the career path that I chose, and share that information with you. So let's start with my first job out of college. Was with a management consulting firm called CACI, C-A-C-I, out of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. It was founded by a couple of guys. One of them is Herb Carr, who was from California, an entrepreneur, and this is now in the mid-'80s. And I was in work for about 2 weeks, and they had a new hire breakfast with the CEO event. So of course I signed up, and not only that, I went in and sat right next to the guy. Introduced myself, sat right down, and then I thought, oh my gosh, now I'm a little nervous. And what am I going to ask? What is he going to ask me? Is there going to be some test questions? So in hindsight, I was thinking maybe I shouldn't have sat next to the CEO, but I went ahead and did it and took the risk and went for it. And it turned out I ended up with a great lesson learned from that breakfast. So I turned over during the breakfast. I leaned over and I said, Mr. Carr, what advice do you have for a young guy like me, right out of college, just starting work here at CACI? I think you're a great company and with a great future, but what advice do you have for me? And he said, well, Mark, do you have your resume ready? And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? I've only been here for 2 weeks. I've pretty much been in training, but did I upset a trainer? Was there some performance thing that I didn't know about that I failed on? I mean, oh my gosh, why is he telling me to get my resume ready? So he could probably see the shock in my face, and my jaw dropped, or I think I may have went quiet for a few minutes. And I said, sir, please explain. Have I done something wrong? And he said, no, Mark, let me explain. He said, it's the mid-'80s. The personal computers, Apple, the Apple Lisa had just been out a couple years prior. The new desktop computing was coming around. The idea of software and enterprise software was starting to make a name for itself, moving away from mainframes to mini computers. And he said, Mark, this software industry is really going to be dynamic. And he says, you have two career choices. One, you could work for someone like IBM, who was the name brand at that time, and you could spend 30 or 40 years there and collect a pension when you get done. Keep in mind that back then we didn't have 401k plans. It was just pensions, saving plans with big companies or the government. And so he said that's a very stable approach that you can take. They may allow you to change jobs or roles throughout that 30 or 40 years, and it's a clear and present strategy that you could take as a career path. But he said the one I like, and the reason I asked you to get your resume ready, is because this whole software industry that's right in front of us is just so exciting and so dynamic, and it's going to be filled with so many opportunities. And he said you're going to end up, if you take this path, it's going to be high risk, high reward opportunities, and because of that you may get acquired by companies, and it's going to be some risk involved. You may need to make some changes along the way, and he said I think that's going to be okay. He said the experience you'll get from all those changes could be invaluable, but you need to make sure that you're comfortable with change and change management, and what comes along with it. I'm not saying that it's like going to Las Vegas and going gambling, but there is risk involved. You need to do your due diligence, look at these companies, and figure out whether you want to work with them or not. So he said that's your two choices: IBM, 30, 40 years, or software industry, dynamic, ever-changing, high risk, high reward. You have two choices. So that's why I'm saying get your resume ready. Nothing against your performance. Just think about the career that you want to have ahead of you. If we lose you and any of the people around this table in 2 years or 1 year or even less, he says that's okay. There's lots of great talent coming out of the universities. We're prepared for that change as well. And I think you should think about what path you want to take. So I felt much better now, and I went back and thought about it. And if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you look at my resume and CV, you can see that I have taken the latter approach. I didn't work for IBM or any big company for 30 or 40 years. I have moved around, and it was by design and on purpose. And it has provided me a wealth of experience, both diverse, wide, and deep, different types and sizes of companies, different types and sizes of technologies, public, private, small to medium-sized companies. I've worked for venture capital firms. I've worked for one and two man organizations. I've worked for smaller companies that were bootstrapped without any venture capital. I formed a couple of companies on my own. One was a complete failure. One we actually ended up selling, me and my partner. So that was sort of somewhat of a success. And it's just been an exciting, dynamic career for 30 years, making these changes. I will say I had a couple of divorces along the way. That's either good or bad, depending on how you looked at it, but that sort of fueled some changes as well. But most of my changes came from IPOs. So a company would do an IPO. In one case, I took my money and left and started my own company, the one that I sold later. I think I've been through 7 or 8 mergers and acquisitions throughout the years. So when the big company would buy the smaller company, I'd stay a little bit, then I'd move on to the next high risk, high reward, venture capital startup. That was sort of my modus operandi throughout my career. There were a few layoffs and reduction in forces along the way. There were a few failures. I tell you, if I had a crystal ball and were able to, do the due diligence and look into the financials for many of these small companies, maybe I'd be a gazillionaire today. But I didn't have that crystal ball. I've gotten pretty good at evaluating companies, but for some of the smaller private ones, you're not going to get all the financials released, and you're taking that risk. And to an extent, you're drinking the Kool-Aid and you're believing in what they have, and you go out and you try to sell it and market it. But sometimes things don't work out, and there's changes that occur because of that. Again, in hindsight, if you go out and look at sales reps today, I don't think you're going to find one that's a little bit like me. Number one, I'm 6 foot 8 inches tall, as I said in video 1, so I'm a big guy that people remember. And number 2, let's talk about the geography. I've worked and lived in 20 cities in 8 U.S. states. I've lived and worked in 7 countries on 3 continents, mostly Western Europe, the Middle East, and Asia Pacific. I've had the opportunity to travel to, I think, now 39 countries. I've actually sold software and services into 20 countries. And I got to tell you, that diversity, that wealth of experience, to me, has just been priceless. And it's impacted my family as well. My kids have been able to travel with me. They've been able to come visit me in foreign countries, things that maybe they would have never been able to do had I worked for IBM for 30 years. So again, it was a career path that I took, and no regrets. Technology-wise, I've the first half of my career was primarily around PLM and CAD/CAM, selling engineering and manufacturing type solutions. The latter half of my career has been around content management, BPM, which is now intelligent automation, robotics, and now artificial intelligence, and so forth. So those are sort of the 2 bookends of my career in terms of software and software applications, and my experience around those. All right, guys, that's part 2. Wanted you to get to know me a little bit better through the eyes of my career path, how it all got started, why I decided to take the path that I took, and it's been great. Feel free to ping me anytime if you want to learn more or talk about why I took this path. If you're younger and thinking about what you want to do with your career, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you and brainstorm on what might be best for your career. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Have a great day. Cheers, bye.